get into those teenage years, we start to move the responsibility from it being purely on mum and I to you. And so it starts probably with more conversations than consequences. Consequences will probably come anyway, depending on what you've done.
But it's so easy to be brought up in a Christian home, Jordan, and copy what other people do and never know Jesus yourself.
Right.
There was a cushion on the floor and I could see your knee prints in. And I walked out sobbing because what you do in secret is who you really are, Jordan.
Yeah.
And I knew nobody was going to see that. But you somehow had found your way to Jesus.
We're talking about 16, 17 years old. One of the things that they notice more than probably they've ever done before is whether mum and dad are living out what they've taught. Your life must be the example of godliness that you are teaching your children to live. Otherwise, your kids are just going to throw it out and just say it doesn't work. They're just different. They can spot a hypocrite a mile off.
Right. Let's move now to teenagers. Same question again. How do you navigate moments with maybe older children when they haven't met your expectations? Because then you've got actually a child who can respond. And it's not just a 4-year-old or 5-year-old going to his room. What did you learn from those years?
I think, again, once you get into those teenage years, we start to move the responsibility from it being purely on mum and I to you. And so it starts probably with more conversations than consequences. Consequences will probably come anyway, depending on what you've done. But it is that sitting down, not in order just to lambaste you as a child, but to try and make you see the error of your way. Jordan, can you see what you've done? You know better. We brought you up differently. So now you've done this. Here's what's probably going to happen, Jordan. And it's not probably going to affect mum and dad as much as it is you.
Right.
So it's trying to give you that access back to what's already been put inside of you, that wisdom tells you, Dad, I shouldn't have done that. I know I'm going to learn and move forward. Instead of go to your room, sit on the naughty step, or some other punishment that would have worked when you were younger.
Right. Well, what about you? Because, I mean, everyone who's heard me preach knows before that during my teen years, I didn't do great in school in terms of following the Lord. I made some horrible decisions. You weren't fully aware of all my decisions, but what talk about a spiritual perspective now. You've answered, more from a not fulfilling criteria of school, but what about when, hey, I raised you to follow the word of God and I'm not seeing that from you. I'm seeing, let's not go into certain examples, but decisions I made that you were like, Jordan, this is not the will of God. What about that?
So as a mother, when a child gets to, and let's talk about 16, because it's a really interesting age, 16. You're not quite a man.
The height of my poor choices in life.
Yeah. And we knew, not all of the choices, but we knew you weren't following Jesus. And it's not so much what you do, it's how you live your life. You can just tell. And I can remember the first thing me and Paul did, we sat down and we wrote all our scriptures down about children being followers of Jesus. And we used to speak them over you and Bethany all the time. Aaron clearly had found his own relationship with Jesus. But it's so easy to be brought up in a Christian home, Jordan, and copy what other people do and never know Jesus yourself.
Right.
So when I was 15, I was teaching Sunday school and I wasn't even born again. I did everything right. I read my Bible every day. I prayed, but I didn't know Jesus. And I think for parents, they have to look at the fruit of someone's life. And I was 16 and I can remember thinking, if I don't make this decision now, I'll live the rest of my life pretending. And so I knew at that moment you weren't fully given over to Jesus. And I can remember your dad saying, I need to take him on a missions trip. And I was really concerned because I'm thinking, well, we're going to take him and he didn't really know Jesus. But your dad thought it'd be really good for him, didn't you?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was your decision. Well done, Dad.
Yeah. He thought you should go. But the outcome of all that is I can remember you must have been about 18 and a half and I came into your bedroom and there was...
For the crusade?
No, this is a long time after. And there was a cushion on the floor and I could see your knee prints in. And I walked out sobbing because what you do in secret is who you really are, Jordan.
Yeah.
And I knew nobody was going to see that. But you somehow had found your way to Jesus. So give them a lot of grace. I do think teenagers need a lot of grace.
That's right.
I also think you love them despite what they do. But also I acknowledge that it's quite difficult being brought up in a Christian home. Do you think?
I think I think one of the things for me that was difficult was watching Aaron literally get his walk with Jesus, what seemed perfect, I'd go into his room asking if he wanted to play PlayStation. He's praying on the floor at like 14. I think the hard thing was I thought to myself, I don't have a desire to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. And what makes it worse is I know I should be doing that while I'm living this whole secret life at school. My brother's trying to do a Christian union, and I'm trying to find any way I can to go to my friend's house party tonight at 16. And it's a horrible internal conflict of I want to do the things in the world. I've got desires in my heart as a teenager that are sinful and that I want to do in private without mum and dad knowing, but I know it's not right. And it's this whole conflict internally of those feelings.
And parents can't do that choice for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Jordan, can I just add something here? I should say to you as well. Parents, when your children are getting to this age we're talking about, 16, 17 years old, one of the things that they notice more than probably they've ever done before is whether mum and dad are living out what they've taught.
Right.
And if at that age, mum and dad are not living lives right before God, that they are different in the home than they are at church with other people watching, then why would your children now at this age where they are making their own decisions want to follow this supposed God?
Because then parents become a hypocrite.
Yeah, you're a hypocrite. So what parents must do, and it needs to be genuine as well, because your children will spot it, is your life must be the example of godliness that you are teaching your children to live. Otherwise, your kids are just going to throw it out and just say, it doesn't work. They're just different. They can spot a hypocrite a mile off.
Right. So that sort of leads well to the next question here, and then we'll sort of conclude this. How did you deal with moments that you felt as parents that you might have failed? Now, let me preface this by saying you were outstanding parents, but I think by admission you would both say you maybe didn't get everything right. So I think let's talk about this from an internal perspective and then an external. Firstly, internal, how as a parent do you not live with guilt of mistakes? But secondly, how do you potentially rectify mistakes and learn and move forward? Because I'm sure there's people watching today that you feel like you failed as a parent. You feel like I've messed it up. So firstly, apply it to you both, and then we'll minister to people watching. How did you deal with moments where you go, I messed that up?
I don't want this in any way to sound arrogant, but I cannot think of many times where, from a spiritual perspective, what we did in the way that we did, I felt we'd messed up or would necessarily change in a major way. I'm talking about the things we mentioned earlier on, your daily discipline with your children, the way you bring them up, putting the word into them. We will never regret that. You learn wisdom as a parent as you grow up in some of the practical things that you would do, and maybe some of the pressures you put on your kids until you recognize their gifts that we've been talking about earlier on. And so if you wind the clock back, would we change some things from those kind of perspectives? Yes, we would. And inside, you just have to deal with that. You know you did. You know you asked your children or whatever, and the next time you wouldn't do that again. That's life. You learn from it. And the great thing with grandchildren is you can now put those same principles into our grandchildren, but some of those other areas you leave to mum and dad now. So I think life is life. Learn from some of the mistakes. Also, be big enough to say sorry to your children.
Yeah.
Say, I shouldn't have done that, Jordan, in the way that I did that. And next time I'll seek to be better. And your children will respect you for those kind of things as well.